Special Agent Sarah Chen's fingers tightened around her steering wheel as the patrol car's lights flashed in her rearview mirror. The quiet suburban street suddenly felt hostile and unfamiliar. She hadn't been speeding. Her FBI training had taught her always to follow traffic laws to the letter. But something about this stop felt wrong. The approaching footsteps told her this wasn't going to be routine. As she reached for her credentials, she caught the officer's reflection in her mirror, his hand resting on his weapon, a sneer twisting his features. This wasn't about traffic laws. This was about something else entirely. Sarah's heart raced as she watched the officer's deliberate approach through her side mirror. In 15 years of service, she'd never felt this vulnerable. The weight of her service weapon felt both reassuring and dangerous. One wrong move could turn this situation deadly. The officer's shadow loomed closer, and Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Sarah Chen hadn't risen to become the FBI's youngest unit chief by backing down from challenges. At 38, she'd earned every accolade through grit and unwavering determination. Her corner office in the Seattle field office displayed commendations for cracking impossible cases, but none of them mentioned the real battles, being a Chinese-American woman in a field dominated by men who looked nothing like her. Her daily routine was clockwork precision, up at 5 a.m. for a run, morning briefing by 7:30, and case reviews until her eyes burned. Today had started normally enough, reviewing a series of suspicious bank transactions that pointed to an elaborate money laundering scheme. Her team respected her methodical approach and her ability to see patterns others missed. Even her harshest critics couldn't deny her record, a 94% case closure rate that spoke louder than any prejudice. But something had felt off this morning. The sideways glances from local officers during her visit to the precinct, the whispered conversations that stopped when she entered rooms. Sarah had brushed it aside, focused on the case at hand. Now those subtle warnings clicked into place as she watched the uniformed officer approach her car, his hand still resting on his weapon. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat, probably Deputy Director Morrison checking on her progress with the banking case. That investigation had stirred up unexpected resistance from several high-ranking local officials. Sarah had started connecting dots that painted an uncomfortable picture of corruption reaching into the police department itself. She'd been close to something big, too close. The realization hit her like ice water. This wasn't a random traffic stop. This was a message. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." The officer's voice carried a calculated edge that confirmed Sarah's suspicions. Through her mirror, she could make out his name tag, Officer James Miller. His stance was textbook intimidation, angled just enough to keep his gun hand in shadow. "Officer Miller." Sarah kept her voice steady, professional. "I'm Special Agent Sarah Chen, FBI." She reached slowly for her credentials, making sure her movements were deliberate and visible. "I'd like to know the reason for this stop." Miller's laugh was cold, dismissive. "FBI? That's a new one. Out of the car. Now." Sarah's training screamed at her that this was wrong, all wrong. No probable cause was stated, no request for license and registration, straight to demanding she exit the vehicle. She pressed the emergency alert button on her phone, a discreet SOS to her team, before slowly opening her door. The summer heat hit her like a wall as she stepped onto the pavement, her suit jacket suddenly too heavy. Miller's eyes weren't scanning for threats, they were fixed on her with focused hostility. 2 more patrol cars pulled up, boxing her in. This had been planned. "Hands where I can see them," Miller barked, though her hands were already raised. "You've been asking a lot of questions around town, Agent Chen. Making people nervous. I'm conducting a federal investigation, Officer Miller." Sarah kept her voice calm, even as her mind raced through scenarios. 3 officers now, all with hands on weapons. Interfering with that investigation would be. "Search the vehicle." Miller cut her off, gesturing to one of his colleagues. "We received an anonymous tip about narcotics." Sarah's anger flared. "You need probable cause for a search." An anonymous tip isn't dash. Oh, I've got probable cause. Miller stepped closer, towering over her. When I approached your vehicle, I detected a strong odor of marijuana. And given your erratic behavior, I have reason to believe you might be under the influence. It was happening exactly as she'd feared. They were going to plant evidence, and use it to discredit her entire investigation. The banking records, the shell companies, the connections she'd uncovered, it would all be dismissed as the work of a compromised agent. We both know what this is really about, Sarah said, meeting Miller's gaze. The Riverside Development Project. The missing funds? The shell companies traced back to City Hall. You're not here to enforce the law, you're here to break it. Miller's expression darkened. Cuff her. That would be a mistake. Sarah's voice cut through the tension. My team knows exactly where I am. They know what I've uncovered. And in about 30 seconds, they're going to start wondering why I'm not responding to their calls. The second officer had already reached her car door, but Miller held up his hand, stopping him. Doubt flickered across his face. This wasn't going according to plan. You want to do this? Sarah pressed her advantage. Because right now, this is just harassment. But the moment you plant whatever's in your partner's pocket, it becomes a conspiracy. And I'm guessing the people pulling your strings didn't explain how federal charges work. A police radio crackled to life. All units, be advised, FBI tactical team en route to your location. Please respond. Miller's face contorted with rage. He grabbed Sarah's arm, jerking her forward. You think you're so smart? By the time your backup arrives, dash. The screech of tires cut him off as a black SUV roared around the corner, followed by another. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Time's up, Officer Miller. Now, would you like to explain to my team why you're assaulting a federal agent, or should I? The next 48 hours became a whirlwind. Sarah sat in Assistant Director Thompson's office, her suit still wrinkled from the confrontation. The silver-haired veteran agent paced behind his desk, his face a storm cloud of concern and controlled fury. They're saying you threatened Officer Miller, Thompson said, tossing a preliminary report onto his desk. That you brandished your weapon and made accusations without evidence. He paused, fixing Sarah with a penetrating stare. The police chief is demanding your removal from the investigation. Of course he is, Sarah replied, her voice tight. Because I'm getting close. The Riverside Development Project is just the tip of the iceberg, sir. I've uncovered a pattern of shell companies, all linked to offshore accounts. The same accounts that received wire transfers match exactly the amount of missing federal grant money. Thompson sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. Chen, you're one of my best agents. But this is bigger than money laundering. The mayor's office is involved now. They're claiming your investigation is racially motivated, a vendetta against the police department. Sarah's laugh was bitter. They're going there? After what Miller pulled? They're going everywhere. Thompson slid another document across his desk. Internal Affairs is opening an investigation into your conduct. They're questioning every case you've handled in the past year. The words hit Sarah like physical blows, but she refused to flinch. They're trying to bury the evidence. The question is why? What's in those development contracts that's worth risking federal charges? A knock at the door interrupted them. Agent Marcus Rivera, Sarah's partner for the past 3 years, stepped in. His usually relaxed demeanor was replaced by urgent intensity. Sorry to interrupt, sir, but we've got something. He handed Sarah a tablet. Remember that witness from the construction company? The one who wouldn't talk? He just walked into our field office. Says someone tried to kill him last night. Sarah's eyes widened as she scanned the preliminary statement. Thomas Reeves, former project manager for Riverside Construction. He's naming names, sir. City council members, police officials, even federal housing inspectors. They're tying up loose ends, Thompson mused, his expression darkening. How many men do you need to protect the witness? Before Sarah could answer, her phone buzzed. The message made her blood run cold, a photo of her sister's house, followed by 3 words. Back off, Chen. They're not just tying up loose ends, Sarah said, showing Thompson the message. They're sending warnings. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Sarah's sister and her family were moved to a safe house. Agent Rivera coordinated protection details while Sarah dove back into the financial records, now with Reeves' testimony providing crucial context. The pattern emerged like a dark web, each thread leading to more corruption. Construction contracts inflated by millions, kickbacks disguised as consulting fees, and building and inspectors paid to overlook violations. But something still didn't add up. The numbers are too big, Sarah muttered, spreading documents across her desk. Even with all the kickbacks and bribes, there's too much money moving through these accounts. Rivera looked up from his computer. Maybe they're using the construction project to launder other money. Could explain why they're willing to risk so much to keep it quiet. Sarah was about to respond when her office door burst open. Agent Jessica Wong, their financial crimes specialist, rushed in, her face pale. You need to see this, Wong said, pulling up data on the main screen. I've been tracking those wire transfers, trying to find the source. They're not just laundering money from the construction project. These accounts, they're connected to human trafficking operations. Multiple cities, all using similar development projects as cover. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about corrupt cops and stolen grant money anymore. They'd stumbled onto something far darker. Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another message. Final warning. Walk away or her blood is on your hands. This time, the photo showed her sister at the safe house, the one they'd moved her to just hours ago. They've got someone inside the bureau, Sarah realized, her voice barely a whisper. That's the only way they could know where Dash. The building's fire alarm suddenly blared to life, its piercing wail sending agents scrambling. Through her office window, Sarah saw smoke rising from the evidence room 2 floors below. The files, she gasped, already moving. Rivera, secure Reeves. Wong, back everything to our off-site server. They're not just sending warnings anymore, they're destroying evidence. Sarah sprinted down the emergency stairs, gun drawn. The smoke was thicker here, acrid and chemical. Someone had started this fire deliberately, probably using an accelerant. As she reached the evidence room floor, a figure in tactical gear emerged from the smoke-filled corridor, heading for the rear exit. FBI! Stop right there! The figure turned, and Sarah's heart nearly stopped. Beneath the tactical mask, she caught a glimpse of a familiar face, Agent David Marshall, her former mentor, the man who'd recruited her to the Bureau 15 years ago. I'm sorry, Sarah. Marshall's voice was muffled by his mask. Some things are bigger than justice. The sound of gunfire echoed through the smoke-filled hallway. Sarah dove behind a filing cabinet as bullets ricocheted off metal surfaces. Her mind reeled from Marshall's betrayal, but her body moved on instinct, returning fire even as questions exploded in her head. 15 years of trust and mentorship reduced to this moment of violence and betrayal. You taught me better than this, David! She shouted through the smoke. You taught me to follow the evidence, no matter where it led. I taught you to understand the bigger picture. Marshall's voice echoed back. You think this is just about money? About corruption? There are powers at play here you can't comprehend. The smoke alarm continued its deafening wail as Sarah edged around the cabinet. Through the haze, she could make out Marshall's silhouette moving toward the evidence room. She couldn't let him destroy what they'd uncovered. The trafficking victims, Sarah called out, trying to keep him talking while she maneuvered for a better position. What about them? Are the people being smuggled through these construction sites? Were they part of your bigger picture? A pause in the gunfire. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good. That's not you talking, Sarah said, inching closer. Those are someone else's words. Who got to you, David? When did you stop being the agent who taught me to protect the innocent? The sprinkler system finally activated, sending cascades of water through the smoke. Sarah blinked against the spray, her suit soaked in seconds. The water was washing away the smoke, clearing her vision and her shot. "Drop the weapon, David! Last chance!" Instead of answering, Marshall fired again. The muzzle flashed bright in the artificial rain. Sarah returned fire, her bullet catching him in the shoulder. He stumbled but didn't fall, disappearing through the evidence room door. "Can you spot all the clues that led to Marshall's involvement?" There were subtle hints throughout, from his Kosovo connection to the compromised safe houses. Share your favorite foreshadowing moments in the comments, and don't forget to like and share if you enjoyed Sarah's journey for justice. Sarah pursued, knowing every second counted. Inside the evidence room, water rained on boxes of documents and electronic equipment. Marshall stood by the main evidence cabinet, a small device in his hand. "It's already too late," he said, his voice heavy with something that might have been regrettable. "The files are corrupted. The servers are wiped. In 10 minutes, there won't be any evidence left of what you discovered. You think I didn't make copies?" Sarah kept her weapon trained on him. "That I didn't have backups of everything? You taught me to always have contingencies, remember?" Marshall's laugh was hollow. "And you think they don't know that? Why do you think your sister's safe house was compromised? They're everywhere, Sarah. In the bureau, in the police, in the government itself. By now, they're probably already at your off-site storage facility." Sarah's blood ran cold as her phone buzzed. A text from Rivera. "Wong is down. Server promised. They knew exactly where to look. You gave them everything." Sarah realized, rage and disappointment warring in her voice. "All my protocols, all my failsafe. You handed them the blueprint to destroy me." "I gave them what they needed to maintain order," Marshall replied. "Sometimes the truth does more damage than the lie. I learned that the hard way." "When?" Sarah demanded. "When did you decide to become everything you taught me to fight against?" "Kosovo, 2019, Marshall said quietly. "What I found there, some truths aren't meant to be exposed, Sarah. Some doors should stay closed. I thought I could protect you from this, guide you away from certain investigations, but you were always too good at your job." The device in his hand beeped, and suddenly the sprinklers cut out. Emergency lights flashed red, casting strange shadows across Marshall's face. "The evidence is gone," he said. "But you're still a loose end. And we both know they don't leave loose ends. If they want to erase me, they'll have to do better than you." Sarah replied, her finger steady on the trigger. "I'm bringing this whole operation down, David. And you're going to help me do it." Marshall's eyes narrowed. "What makes you think dash?" "Because I recorded everything you just said." Sarah cut him off. "From the moment I saw you in that tactical gear. And unlike the evidence you just destroyed, this recording is broadcasting live to someone even your powerful friends can't reach." The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor outside. Marshall's expression hardened as he raised his weapon. "Then I guess we both know what happens next. David, don't dash." The evidence room erupted in gunfire. Sarah rolled behind a metal desk as bullets shattered the glass partitions around her. Through the chaos, she heard Marshall grunt in pain. Her earlier shot to his shoulder was taking its toll. But wounded animals were often the most dangerous, and Marshall was far from cornered. Her phone vibrated again. "Sister secure. Moving to a secondary location. Rivera." Relief flooded through her, immediately followed by clarity. Marshall had revealed more than he'd intended. Kosovo 2019. The missing piece clicked into place. The mysterious shutdown of a human trafficking investigation that year, the abrupt reassignment of key personnel. She tracked those same patterns in the Riverside case. "You're not just covering up local corruption," Sarah called out, keeping Marshall talking while she worked her way around the room's perimeter. "Kosovo was the prototype, wasn't it? The perfect blueprint for how to hide trafficking operations inside legitimate construction projects. Only it got too big, too profitable to shut down. You don't understand." Marshall's voice was strained. "They own everything. Judges, politicians, entire agencies. Taking them down would collapse the whole system. The system needs to collapse. Sarah's voice rang with conviction. How many lives have been destroyed while you protected their secrets? The emergency lights cast moving shadows as Marshall shifted position. They're coming for you, Sarah. Even if you survive this, you'll never be safe. Neither will your family. Sarah's tactical training kicked in as she heard the subtle click of Marshall reloading. 3 rounds left in her magazine. The backup piece was strapped to her ankle. No clear shot without exposing herself. Her earpiece crackled to life. Chen, SWAT team 60 seconds out. Hold position. It was Thompson's voice, tight with urgency. But Sarah knew they didn't have 60 seconds. Through the broken windows, she could see more smoke rising from other parts of the building. This wasn't just about destroying evidence anymore, they were creating chaos and confusion. The perfect cover for what came next. They're not just coming for me, are they? Sarah said, the realization hitting her. This whole thing, the fire, the evacuation, it's all theater. They're using it to clean the house. Anyone who might know too much. Marshall's bitter laugh confirmed it. Always too clever. It's why I picked you, you know. Saw myself in you. That same drive to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The difference is, I never stopped believing the truth matters. The building's power cut out suddenly, plunging them into darkness broken only by emergency lights and the glow of fires. In the distance, Sarah could hear gunfire from other parts of the building. The cleansing had begun. Her phone lit up one last time. Secondary location compromised. Multiple hostiles. Need immediate backup. Sarah's heart clenched. Rivera and her sister were walking into a trap, and SWAT was about to do the same. This wasn't just about survival anymore. She had to end this now, had to reach them before it was too late. Last chance, David, she called out, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her chest. Help me stop this. We can still make it right. The silence stretched for a moment, broken only by the distant wail of sirens and the crackle of flames. You're right about one thing, Marshall finally replied, his voice closer than before. This needs to end. Sarah heard the whisper of movement behind her and spun, bringing her weapon up as Marshall emerged from the shadows, his gun aimed at her heart. Their eyes met across the darkened room, mentor and protege, both knowing that only one of them would walk away. Drop it, Sarah, Marshall commanded, his gun unwavering. Don't make me do this. Sarah's mind raced through her options, each one worse than the last. Her sister and Rivera needed her, but she'd be no help to anyone if she was dead. The smoke from nearby fires was getting thicker, and time running out. You already made your choice, Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the racing of her heart. The moment you decided to protect them instead of their victims. A flicker of something, regret, pain, uncertainty, crossed Marshall's face. For a split second, his aim wavered. That's when Sarah saw it. The reflection in the broken glass behind him, a familiar silhouette moving in the darkness. Wong hadn't been taken down at the server farm after all. She was here, and she had Marshall in her sights. Sarah kept talking, holding Marshall's attention. You taught me that the truth always comes out, David. That justice finds a way. Did you forget everything you believed in, or were you lying to me from the start? I was trying to protect you. Marshall's voice cracked with emotion. Some truths destroy everything they touch. I couldn't let that happen to you. No, Sarah said quietly. You were protecting yourself. And now you have one last choice to make. Marshall's finger tightened on the trigger. Don't dash. FBI. Drop your weapon. Wong's voice rang out from behind him. Marshall spun, bringing his gun around. Sarah launched herself forward as 3 shots exploded in the darkness. She felt the burn of a bullet grazing her arm as Marshall fell backward, his gun clattering to the floor. Sarah kicked his weapon away, keeping her own trained on him as Wong rushed forward. Blood spread across Marshall's chest, but his eyes were clear as they met Sarah's one last time. Kosovo, he gasped. The proof, my safe. I kept it all. His eyes glazed over, 15 years of mentorship ending in a final act of redemption. "Chun!" Wong's urgent voice cut through the moment. "Rivera's location just came through. They're walking into an ambush." Sarah nodded, pushing aside her grief. There would be time for that later. The safe first. Whatever Marshall kept from Kosovo is what they'd been trying to hide. Get it to Thompson, he'll know what to do. She turned toward the door, checking her weapon. "I'm going after Rivera and my sister." "Sarah," Wong called after her. "The recording of Marshall's confession, I got it all. We can bring them down." Sarah paused in the doorway, smoke swirling around her. "Then let's finish what we started." She stepped into the darkness, leaving her mentor's body behind. The truth had finally broken free, but the cost had been steep. Now she had one last battle to fight, and this time, she wouldn't let them bury it. 3 months later, Sarah stood at Marshall's grave, a folded flag in her hands. The autumn wind rustled through nearby trees as she read the simple headstone. Behind her, Thompson approached, his footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. "The last of the Kosovo files went public this morning," he said quietly. 38 indictments so far, including 3 federal judges and a deputy director. The trafficking network is finished. Sarah nodded, her throat tight. "And Riverside? Construction's been halted. The development company's assets are frozen. Your sister's testimony about the attempt on her life sealed it. They're not walking away from this one." She placed the flag on Marshall's grave, remembering his final act of redemption. The evidence in his safe had blown the case wide open, exposing decades of corruption and human trafficking operations disguised as legitimate construction projects. "He could have done the right thing sooner," Sarah said softly. "Could have helped us stop it years ago." Thompson placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "He did the right thing in the end. Gave us everything we needed to bring them down." Sarah thought of Rivera, still recovering from wounds sustained during the ambush, and Wong, now leading her task force investigating similar operations across the country. The truth had come at a heavy price, but it had finally broken through the walls of silence. "The Bureau's changing," Thompson continued. "Your promotion to Assistant Director of Anti-Corruption takes effect next week. We need people like you, Chin. People who won't back down, who'll fight for the truth no matter the cost." Sarah touched a fresh scar on her arm, a permanent reminder of that night in the evidence room. "Marshall used to say that some truths destroy everything they touch. He was wrong. It's the lies that destroy us. The truth sets us free." She turned away from the grave, ready to face whatever came next. The system hadn't collapsed, as Marshall had feared. Instead, it was being rebuilt, stronger and more transparent than before. There would always be those who abused their power and tried to bury the truth beneath layers of corruption and fear. But as long as people were willing to stand against them, willing to shine light into the darkness, justice would find a way. Sarah Chen would make sure of it. Did this tale of corruption, betrayal, and redemption keep you on the edge of your seat? Join our community of thriller enthusiasts by subscribing to our newsletter. You'll get exclusive access to more stories of complex characters fighting against systemic corruption, plus behind-the-scenes insights into how these stories come to life. What would you have done in Sarah's position when faced with Marshall's betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and join our discussion about moral choices in impossible situations. Your perspective could help shape future stories in this world of high-stakes federal investigations.